The story is the itsy bitsy baby that grew up. This story begins with a little guy born on, oh, but wait. Let's look back a bit further. Robert Donald McKee went to Howe High School here in Indianapolis. He was raised by his parents, Robert and Margaret McKee. Robert, or Bob or Bobby, as everyone called him, had one sister, Phyllis Jean. Bobby's friends wanted him to meet a purty gal by the name of Barbara Joy Johnson, who went to Tech High School here in Indianapolis. Barbara, or Barb as everyone called her, was an only child. She was raised by her grandparents. Her mother was an alcoholic and was not very fit to raise a child at that time. Bob and Barb met and dated. Bob went on to IU to study, quotation marks, for a semester before finding out, yeah, you do really need to study in college to stay in college. Next thing you know, on October 10th, 1953, Bob and Barb got married in the little church on the Circle in downtown Indianapolis. Bob enlisted in the Air Force, and off they went. Next up, baby Michael McKee came along on October 1st, 1954, born in San Antonio, Texas. After years passed, Bob and Barb figured they might never have any larger family. After 4 years in service, Bob and Barb moved back to Indy, where Bob took a job at Mr. Clark's Appliances. If you remember that face of Mr. Clark, they all believed it was my dad. After some years back in Indy, Barb was having some health concerns and was being treated for a hormonal deficiency. So guess the thought of not having a larger family changed dramatically. At 7 months, here comes Mark Allen McKee, the itsy bitsy baby this story is all about. Born very early, under 4 pounds, on September 30th, 1967, yes, totally messed with his big brother's big 13th birthday that was the very next day. Yeah, that's how I fly. 30 days in an incubator, and little itsy bitsy Mark was finally able to come home to his family. Everyone would compare his size to a stuffed baby doll. There are pictures to prove this. Then, born a few years later in 1970, Bob and Barb completed their family by having their last child, Cheryl Lynn McKee. The McKee family lived in a small house near 30th and Arlington. Fenced yard, huge tree in the backyard that would drop acorns on the roof. Mark and Cheryl shared a bedroom. Needless to say, this was not fun when a stomach flu would hit one of them. That metal pot their mom would use for you-know-what, Dad would use to make popcorn. Yep. Years were good all at that little house, even when he was told to not swing the wiffle ball bat in the house. Mark's grandparents were visiting, and bam. Yeah, he hits his gramps across the side of the head with the wiffle bat. He adored this man and was crushed. If Mark would have just listened to his parents. Mark and family summer vacations were usually down in Lehigh Acres, Florida, visiting his mom's mom. Elva was now a recovering alcoholic and loved spending time with her daughter and daughter's family. Her favorite drink now was an Arnold Palmer, which, if you don't know, is tea and lemonade. Not far was Fort Myers and Sanibel and Captiva. This will be important to remember later in this story. In 1977, after living in that small home at about 30th and Arlington, the McKee family moved to Franklin Township, just across from the Franklin Central Middle School High School. Itsy Bitsy Mark is not so itsy bitsy anymore. And now he and his sister have their own rooms. Yay. Now, in the middle of his third grade, great time to move, right? Well, yes, if you understand that date. It was right before the blizzard of 1978. Best winter ever for a kid. Now, let's fast forward a bit to middle school. Mark enjoyed band. When selecting the instrument, the band director at that time said Mark's embouchure, the way his mouth connects to the mouthpiece, directs him to be trombone. No way, Jose, per Mark. Trumpet it will be. This is where Mark befriended Mike Brown, member of Southeastern. That's the connection. First connection. What was not Mark's forte was cross country and basketball that his parents thought would be good for him. During those middle school years, Mark and one of his neighbors would run around on mopeds. Or maybe to help you understand the younger generation, they are called scooters today. Through all the treks through Franklin Township and, well, other areas his mom and dad had no idea how far and away he went, there was one place he had stopped. Over on Indian Creek Road, behind the high school, was a 40-acre horse farm. Beautiful horses. Mark befriended the horse trader, Mr. Collins, as he always called him, never by first name, and his family he befriended. Mark was scared to death of horses at first. But with some nudging, he started learning to ride a Tennessee Walker named Jenny. She was not a small mare, towering over 16 hands tall. Well, needless to say, Mark was hooked, and hooked hard. Mark would help Mr. Collins take care of the 15 head of horses and property. He would get up before school and go feed, even during the middle of winter. After school, he would be found on the 40 acres, either bush hogging, learning to drive a flatbed dually truck with a manual transmission, and even breaking horses. Mark would also help Mr. Collins sell and trade horses. He would make a trek down to Camp Atterbury or the sale barn near there. What fun. Through the multiple years on the farm, Mark had a burro named Sadie that was trained to pull a cart, a 12-year-old standard bred named Marcon Prince that was retired from harness racing, a quarter horse named Sonny, and a filly he named Velvet that was a standard bred that he broke himself. During a portion of his middle school years, Mark and his family were brought about something no family should ever have to deal with. Mark's dad took Mark to meet a lady and her son. Mark was told not to tell his mom. The lady was nice. Mark and the lady's son, near the same age, played and really got along great. But Mark was confused as to who this lady was. Well, it came out and with his mom confronting his dad, Mark's dad had an affair. This rocked Mark's world. How could his father, who he adored, do something like that to his mom? After some time, the dust cleared and all seemed to be fine. Now, Mark's dad never really ever said he was sorry for putting him in such a bad situation. Now, Mark is in his high school years. What a blast. Outside of horses, Mark was involved in band still. Yep, not cross country or basketball though. Band camp, run back and do it again on hot blacktop to get ready for state fair competition. Jazz band, pit orchestra, and trumpet trio. Mark moved up to first trumpet with his buddy Mike Brown right there with him. Mark and Mike's friendship continued to get stronger. Now, they were both growing boys. Each would find out what their families were having for dinner and decide whose house they were going to next. One time, Mark got this brilliant idea to drive the Horse Farms tractor, as an 8N, little big guy, over to Mike's house in the middle of winter. So the tractor dies on the road about halfway to Mike's house on Edgewood Avenue. So Mark has to hoof it to Mike's house. Then they both walk all the way back to the horse farm, get the dually flatbed truck out with chain, get back to the tractor, chain it to the truck, and while Mark's in the nice warm cab of the truck, Mike freezes sitting on the tractor to get it back to the farm. That's friendship. High school had another eye-opening time. With his brother being so much older, 13 years, he really did not know him as a brother. Yes, he loved his brother, no question. But his brother had already moved out of the house at age 18. Mark was only 5 at the time. Well, his brother took Mark to dinner and a movie one weekend. His brother at the time was head waiter at Milano Inn, owned by the LaGrotta family, a great Italian food near downtown that is no longer around today. Mark's idea of his brother was that he was a ladies' man. Yeah, always well dressed. Seemed the ladies liked him too. Well, as Mark and he had dinner, his brother told him that he was gay. This was a total surprise to Mark. And now he understood why ladies liked him, because they didn't feel threatened. To be honest, his brother wanted him to know, since Mark went to school with one of the LaGrotta daughters and did not want Mark to hear from anyone else. Mark loved his brother, but was clear that he did not understand why his brother was gay, but was his decision. Additionally, Mark's parents thought they had raised Michael wrong. Same year in high school, Mark's mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. This really rocked the entire family. Single mastectomy with lymph nodes removed, underarm was performed with no radiation or chemo. Summer before Mark's senior year, Mark always knew that this girl that was in his same year of high school, she played flute and piccolo in the band. He had even tried to get her hooked up with Mike Brown. Her name was Debbie Powell. Her parents even liked Mark, surprisingly. So this and that, Mark remembers that first kiss. That sealed the deal to him. Senior year was great. Mark has his gal. Some teacher talks about how she married young and lived in married student housing during college. Light bulb goes off to Mark. That sounds like fun. Yeah, well, that girl on his arm? No way, Jose. She is like, get a clue, dude. College comes first, then maybe. College years were pretty good for Mark. Study. Still dating that same gal. He took that gal to Florida one summer while watching a sunset along the causeway out to Sanibel and Captiva. He knelt in the sand and proposed. Thankfully, she said yes. Score. But as life, you send another curveball. Mark's brother calls him. On the other end of the line, Mark hears acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS, HIV positive. Mark's heart is in his stomach. He loves his brother so much. He can hear in his brother's voice a scared man. His brother was now living in Fort Myers, Florida with his partner, Danny, and near his grandmother, Elva. Additionally, Mark would visit weekends with his grandfather and grandmother, his dad's side, since it was close to Ball State. His grandmother was showing signs of Alzheimer's disease or dementia. He had never seen his grandfather cry that he so adored. His grandfather got the call from the doctor while Mark was there. She had what we all thought, and his grandfather cried. Mark graduated college with an HR degree early May 1991. Married Debbie Powell on May the 11th, 1991, next week. Honeymoon at Myrtle Beach. The following week, closed on their first house. Started his first job with Justice as their accountant for the home building business. Yes, HR degree, but an accountant. Life is good. What are you going to say? The wedding, there was a buzz. Did the minister, Mike Brown, date the bride? And didn't the maid of honor date the groom? Yeah, it's all true. Us McKees keep things real. After marriage, Mark and Debbie started attending Southeastern Church of Christ. They had high school friends here. Makes sense. It felt right. Mark and Debbie made the important decision in 1992 to follow Christ and were baptized together. Joy was all abound. But again, another curveball happened in 1992. Mark's brother was very ill from being HIV positive. His parents went down to Florida. They urgently called Mark and that he and Debbie should get to Florida quickly. Flight was booked, then delayed an hour. They made it to the hospital in Florida, in Fort Myers, and Mark's brother had already passed away within an hour. Mark did not go back. He does not regret that to this day. He wanted to remember his brother, not a shriveled up body of how HIV can destroy. Now back to Southeastern. Mark and Debbie ran around with the likes of Clint and Karen Davis, Steve and Melanie Fadley, and James and Missy Wallace. Even took vacations together. Someone of the group even got short-sheeted. Life was really good then. Mark got involved with mowing. Clint got Mark on a new John Deere tractor that sits out there in that barn today, or in the garage today. Now, he must be the culprit for Mark's love of green and yellow. Mark got involved in the finance ministry through James Wallace and Craig Hill. Numbers always seemed to come easy to Mark, even though he never looked that smart. Mark and Debbie welcomed Erica Marie in September of '95. What a joy and blessing to their family, but now that 900 square foot home was closing in. In 1997, Mark and Debbie moved to their current fun farm on 5 acres with 3 horses out in Fairland, Indiana. And to this day, they love bringing people out and kids out to enjoy the touch of what farm life can be. In 1998, Mark lost his job with Justice. Church family was awesome. I remember it to this day, or Mark remembers it to this day, of being at the Davis's home with all our friends, all his friends, and how the support was so touching. Mark got an accounting job with Brilane, where Karen Davis worked. From that point, then moved into the benefits manager role, so he's cash manager accounting, now moved into the HR side of the fence in 2005, and has been doing benefits since 2005 to this day. Mark was there for 18 years and now is benefits manager for Finish Line, almost 6 years now. Debbie was asked by Craig Hill to be the church office manager back in 1999. Mark was asked at some point by Craig Hill to become deacon of finance. Then at some point, the eldership asked Mark to be treasurer for the church. Now, several years had passed. Mark and Debbie continued to try and have another baby. Even Clomid was prescribed to both Mark and Debbie. Look that up. I'm not going to explain. With the fear of having a litter, Mark figured if God wants them to have a child, they would, and he stopped Clomid. Then 7 years after having Erica join the family, Debbie comes to the garage door and hollers for Mark to come over. Gleaming with joy and holding a positive pea stick, they are growing their family. Jessica Marie was born in May of '03. As life has it, another curveball. Mark's mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She was never doctor friendly. Chemo was performed. Mark actually shaved his mom's head in the hospital. Things did not go well, and the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. Mark had to tell his mom this. His dad could not. Mark's mom passed away one day after Jessica's first birthday in May of '04. Mark and family rejoiced with the transition to forever healing. Mark and Debbie have so enjoyed being involved with their kids. Erica and Jessica both played basketball and soccer. The high school year when Jessica was a freshman playing for the team, they did not have an announcer. So they asked the parents, hey, who wants to announce the games? Well, knowing that Mark could butcher any name, anytime, any day of the week, He signed up for it. And even after Jessica graduated and went on to Purdue, he still announces soccer games to this day. Mark's dad did remarry. Many of his friends told him that the gal he was dating was not right for him. Seemed more about the money and travel versus actual love for Mark's dad. Well, after his dad being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, she kicked him to the curb. Mark's dad loved his family. He lived for some time in an apartment by himself, then assisted living for a short stint, then a nursing home for the last 4.5 years of his life. Mark was his dad's caregiver as well as healthcare decider. And that's tough on Mark. Mark's dad passed last year after being in a nursing home for that 4+ years. Seeing his dad decline was hard. Mark and family rejoice with his dad's transition to forever healing. Now back to Southeastern. Some over 9 years ago, as with Adrian, Mark was put forth from the congregation as an eldership potential. Now, Mark was used to being behind the scenes and doing things with finance and with property, and never to be in the front. So Mark was unsure. Mark was also concerned that people would stop coming to him, complaining about this and that and whatever. Would that continue because of being an elder? But Mark became an elder and has been for roughly over 9 years now. Time does fly. A family update. Erica married the love of her life after graduating Purdue. He's a good guy, and John Deere tractors are on both farms of both sides of his family. They live in Rushville and have a beautiful son, Asher. All I'm going to say is grandkids rock. Oh, and by the way, she is due in January for number 2. Well, Jessica, she just finished up her second summer internship with John Deere. Her dad is still looking for some discounts. Ann will be finishing up her last year of Purdue this next school year. Yes, Mark scored the girl, have a beautiful family with a grandchild and another one on the way, an awesome church family, and a God that loves all. That's the itsy bitsy baby grew up story. Next week, I'll share more about my journey in leadership, as well as what I see about this church and what how we can continue to do those 3 things: love God, love people, and always make a difference in this world. Thank you, my brothers and sisters, for spending a little time with this ugly mug. I'll give you a little time to get ready for church.